Hi, my name is Melissa. I am from Sandy Hook, Connecticut. I am diagnosed with a skull-based brain tumor called a jugular foramen schwannoma, also invading into the cervical spine, so technically it's in the back. Hobbies right now, just enjoying a day-to-day life and trying to get out and walk where I can and stay active as much as I can because mobility is the one thing I have not lost, and spending time with my 16-year-old daughter during this process. Originally in 2012, I was experiencing a lot of migraines. Initially was chalked up to a baseline diagnosis of Lyme's disease because I had been bitten by a tick. I had a visible tick injury, diagnosed with Lyme. So when I went to the physicians for that ailment and lingering headaches, stuff like that, it was pushed off as a neuro ailment of Lyme's. So I did have a scan back then, which I'm grateful for. Um, but at that time, they did not detect the tumor. But that's when the symptoms did begin. Initially, it was headaches with vertigo. In time, the symptoms started to exacerbate, where it was extreme vertigo, extreme migraines, not really combated by medication. Um, Started even to have some trouble swallowing and just voice hoarseness by the end of the day, which my job required a lot of talking. So again, me being so young, it was kind of dismissed in a sort, but I did find a physician willing to do another MRI at that time. And then it was conclusive at the time that they did find a brain tumor. My emotions at that point were pretty severe. I was honestly under severe distress that I even was doing a lot of alternative healing and all transparency. I went for even like Reiki, intuitive medical healing. That's also where I felt a nudge, at the risk of oversharing, that it was my Reiki master that encouraged me to approach having that second scan. Just saying, like, hey, there's something going on here and it's being missed intuitively. And I felt in my gut that something was wrong because I knew medically if you have these ailments, we could address them. But um, since it wasn't being combated, I just had that gut feeling of something that wasn't right. So I was I would say, pretty depressed at the time too, because it just seemed like my symptoms weren't being alleviated. I was going on multiple appointments to physicians, not being heard, um, and maybe even seemed like it was being treated as anxiety, depression, in all honesty, um, which was not untrue. But when you have medical stuff going on, you're going through that. It was like a mixed bag because I was completely shocked. There was definitely grief in there to be so young, to have had this happen, to have this diagnosis, and then all of the thoughts that go in your head that naturally when you have this diagnosis. I definitely cried a lot in the beginning, but then there was a wave of relief to saying I was not making this up. Like it kind of gave me assurance to say that I was not making these physical ailments up. And no, it was not depression and anxiety. It was an actual physical ailment making me unwell. They went back to the original scan in 2012 and they saw that it was there, but because it was such a rare tumor, because I was so young, because they weren't looking for it, they could actually see the tumor in the 2012 scan. So the 4-year differential, they could see the rate of growth. So, in some ways that was helpful, yet frustrating to know that I wasn't making it up. I was given some options. I could watchfully wait, being I was young and had time. I was offered radiation, and then I was offered traditional chemotherapy. Um, but I took my time in decision making and got many opinions. And when I did research this particular tumor, the standard of care is and was surgery for the first line of combating. So um, I originally did watchfully wait um, until it got to be there was no more waiting. They were doing frequent monitoring every 6 months of the tumor and just saying, here it was at this point, this point, this point. And because of this rate of growth, they were also showing what they call like a mass effect. So I think something that I never always fully understood that even though the tumor is benign, it can still actually cause great harm and kill you. Um, Especially in the brain, it can push things around where they don't belong. And that's what was happening to me. So I got to be where my jugular vein and carotid artery was blocked 100%. So there was concern that there was going to be a vascular event like having a stroke. And then the second thing is the type of tumor that it is a schwannoma, which is Schwann cells, which is nerve cells. So it was wrapped around at least 3 cranial nerves. You have 12 to begin with. And it started to turn and twist them and affect the actual nerves that it was positioned on. And one of the main ones was swallowing. So it was getting to be where I was having difficulty eating day to day. And they would have gone to be having to cut bait and get a feeding tube permanently no matter what if I didn't proceed with an intervention. So that's how the decision making had gotten to be to that point where basically it was having starting to have consequences on my day-to-day life. So again, at that point, I had the two choices between either doing radiation or surgery, and I chose surgery again because being a nurse, I researched it. I had done, researched all the journal articles. The standard of care is first line of defense is surgery. So I went ahead with what they call a craniotomy, meaning they're going to take out brain tumor. I had lots of complications from the craniotomy, which they did warn me that it was not going to be easy. And then when they did proceed with the surgery, they let me know when I woke up that it was bigger and harder than what the imaging had revealed. So many of the complications that I had incurred were reflecting that in my body. So I was forewarned that that there was a strong probability of waking up with the feeding tube. So that part I was warned, but essentially I woke up paralyzed from the left side down all the way into the vocal cord. So in all honesty, I was shocked. I was completely shocked because it was devastating. I mean, it was completely devastating. I cried a lot in the beginning. Did not expect it at all. The feeding tube part, I was warned. I did know these other complications could occur. They were not unrealistic in expressing that. I just think I thought those are those 0.1% things that could happen to someone but not me. So when these rare anomalies happened to me, I think there was definitely, it still is, a period of grieving that goes along with it. It's known too. It's like woke up basically with intelligible speech because my lip movement would not come together, and then the vocal cord wouldn't be together. So initially also had a like a whiteboard that I would write on, or a notebook I would write on, had on voice rest. And then how they accomplished regaining speech was initially they did a temporary, what they call a vocal cord injection. So they put like a cosmetic filler in the vocal cord so that it plumps it up so the vocal cord that isn't working will be plumped up, so the one that is working will be harder against it. So it will work. The other one will work over time, but it will help you emanate a stronger voice. And they did that in hope, in the sense that it would be temporary, and then in time, with speech, using speech as an intervention, um, that my voice would get stronger on its own, and that no further intervention would be warranted. So it did take further intervention. So once that filler did wear off, I did not make the recovery that they had desired. So the second stage they did was take liposuction from the belly, take some fat, and they actually inject the fat into the paralyzed vocal cord, because it's a natural filler. And again, it will plump up your vocal cord, where the paralyzed side will be plump but not beating, and then the non-paralyzed side will beat and make your voice stronger. So it takes, again, speech recovery, each time having to learn to eat and speak again, because it was a new anatomy coming forward. And originally, because this is the paralyzed side on the left, for the first year, I always had to turn my head sideways when truly trying to get a strong voice or even eating, because it actually makes the voice stronger. Or like when eating, you need to close off the paralyzed side in order to let food go down so you don't choke. So I would have to eat with my head turned to the left, to avoid choking. So it was kind of a crazy year to relearn how to do even day-to-day activity. And then I had one more intervention after that, which was deemed the most permanent intervention. It's called a Gore-Tex implant, where they take Gore-Tex material and use that to inject into the vocal cord, being that is like the most permanent. And then, so that is my last intervention to get a strong voice. But it's very positional on my end. My head has to be at 90 degrees facing forward. If I turn certain ways, it does affect my voice looking up and down or laying flat. So, but it was with medical technology that they were able to accomplish that. They were not able to get the entire tumor. So I still have tumor left in the brainstem and then into my cervical spine. The only thing that was an additional achievement, and that is that the vascular was able to come in and cauterize some of the vascularity that will hopefully stop some of the growth of it. So we'll see in time what the next stages of the intervention. So that angst of still having something there that doesn't belong there is still overwhelming. And then I'm still under a high level of care, high level of monitoring, that it's not as though like the tumor is eradicated and now I'm stress free. So it is truly so that there's still, I still feel back to square one, where I'm back to that original high anxiety of like, what are they going to do? And I know that my pathway for surgery is eradicated because the area was damaged. And then what had happened was, when they opened it up for retraction, from start to finish, I was probably in there for about 8 hours. And so not only did I have that vocal cord injury, I woke up with my face being paralyzed. And that wasn't an expected injury for me, because I knew the other ones from where they said the tumor was wrapped. What I didn't understand was that the portal of entry that they took could actually damage the facial nerve, so that when they opened it in retraction, it stretched the facial nerve. So when I woke up, I was essentially paralyzed. It looked like I had extreme Bell's palsy on top of having the vocal cord paralysis. So that was another anxiety provoking moment too, and lots of unknowns. Initially, the first thing they want to do is protect your eye because I could not blink at the side. So they end up putting in a gold eyelid weight. So I didn't realize the eyelid that closes your eye and opens your eyes are two different nerves, because I was like, how would that work? Why would that if you're paralyzed? I guess it is truly a thing that is effective, that helps in accomplishing at least a blink. I still don't have complete eye closure in a sense, so at night I have to tape my eyes shut and put ointment and put a mask just so that I don't sleep with one eye open, just because you don't want to end up scratching your cornea. And then what they do is they do end up like doing like changing the space between your eyelids. They shorten it so you have less to blink. So that was one of the first corrective surgeries for the complications.
So this is the morning after, waking up a bit swollen. Let's see if we can blink.
I'm doing something now, which is a facial rehabilitation I never knew existed, called facial retraining. So the left and the right side of my face, I'll joke, are not friends. They don't communicate correctly. If I go to do like raise my eyebrow, it wants to lift my mouth or something like that. So I'm basically learning to tell my face to have the two sides communicate correctly. So that's the form of, I'll say it's like physical therapy. It's called neuromuscular retraining, is actually a modality I never knew existed until I needed to embark on it. So I am doing that for the recovery. The tumor right now will just be monitored for growth. And then there is another phase of reconstruction for me coming, where they're going to regraft some of my face, where function hasn't returned. So I have like some functional deficits on the side. So even though I'm moving with the nerve testing, it's pretty much complete paralysis when it comes to extreme movements, something like chewing, teeth smiling, gargling, having no gag reflex, even eating, because of this there is incomplete mouth closure. Even when eating, like food will fall out of the front of my mouth because I don't have control. So this grafting is actually going to help to combat some of those complications. So that's the next. It's basically more surgical intervention for me at this point, as opposed to attempting to tackle the tumor. I do think it's honestly such a life-altering experience that it does make you look and value at what is and is not important. And it really is the people around you and the time you have with them. And that really was an eye-opener, just to understand that, really, because you start to realize how life is so short and how the time with the people you have is so short when you're moving through this life-altering experience, for sure. That just get time with people is valuable, for sure. Well, I would definitely just say, like, not to give up and definitely enjoy each moment, because even the little moments are the big moments. And I think for me, I didn't realize that until I had this experience, that how the smallest little thing really does mean the big thing, for sure.